This is the TechMargin podcast and also a YouTube video. And I'm here with my partner in life and art, Christopher O'Connor.
Well, my name is Christopher O'Connor. I am a visual artist. I have been a visual artist for as long as I can remember. So throughout my whole working life as a painter, really, it's the structure to things that has fascinated me. And whenever I get lost in nature, it's really just working around and looking, delving into and finding and seeing and getting really excited about the structure in things, seeing what, to me, is new structure.
Is your approach almost architectural then, would you say?
It is, but well, yeah, because even in high school, I remember I used to love a technical drawing class. I used to love it so much because you could play with all these tools that give you shortcuts.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about like the computer and art as well. You know, it's like you can't sort of just, you have to get it right. There's a rightness to it that's binary that it doesn't exist in a lot of places in the creative realm.
Right, and as you let me know with regards to what you do, it either works or it doesn't. It doesn't kind of work, you know? And I find that really interesting.
Like in a world where things don't typically or always make sense, it can be kind of like refreshing to have like, oh, you know when it's done. It's got like an aspect of it that's.
Yes, you can cross that T and dot that I and move on to another project.
Because so much of being creative is not like that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, I have never been able to just paint one picture at a time, paint it from A to Z, and then sign it and move on.
Right? Like is it that you're doing like a blueprint or something?
Yeah, that's not how it works for me. Like one piece, I might be working on, we'll say just 10 pieces. We'll just say that. Because it varies. Sometimes it could be 6. Sometimes it could be more than 10. And I think for most artists, it is like this, where in the artist studio, there are relics left in there that are turned to the wall or not turned to the wall. And it's just, they're a piece that the artist got. This is as far as they got, and something happened and you either moved on or you didn't know what to do next. And you almost can't go back to that canvas. Like you can't really, if you do, you're going to change all of it again.
Has something to do with like what we make and how we feel about ourselves, you know, and how we feel about that, like how that thing that we made reflects something or not about how we want to show ourselves in the world. Does that sound?
Well, here's the other thing sometimes too, is like, at least for me, like the process of being an artist is trying to discover new things. So in a way, you almost have to be open to many possibilities, but not too many, because then it's way opened up again. But in opening up to those possibilities, you have to sometimes go down lanes that turn into cul-de-sacs.
That is true. I think, listen, I don't remember what I was reading once, but it was like basically the idea that sometimes to go up the mountain where you want to go, trying to go faster up directly doesn't work. You have to actually go around the mountain a few times, and then you'll end up where you wanted to go. It's just that, you know, we have this strong drive to want to make everything linear, I think.
It's funny because whenever you go up the mountain that way, it's actually a very ergonomic way of going up the mountain, because you're not going straight up and hitting it full force. You're just going meandering it up and down, and I think or sideways to sideways. But I think that's actually an interesting way to approach things. Like the path can be laid down to a degree, but it is nice to meander along the path.
Maybe essential even.
Because like if you're just going from A to B constantly, allowing for no nuance in between, I just think, I think burnout is around the corner.
I agree. So there's like a mix between like knowing where you're going.
Yes.
And then knowing like to take breaks and things.
Yes, knowing to take breaks, that can be a challenge sometimes. It can be hard to turn off. Um, I think for me, it works just by getting me out of the studio, right? And going for walks or just going on some travel. That is really helpful for me, but it is always hard to pull me away because I feel like there's always stuff to be done.
I think this segues nicely into the conversation about self worth and the creative process. Uh, okay, so we've been talking about this a little bit lately, but so just to define some terms for the audience, basically, self worth. We often confuse with self confidence, and self confidence is both are important. But without self worth, it's like you have a tree without roots, because self confidence is what builds us, like our drive and our motivation to go and do things in the external world, and what gives us the feeling like we're confident enough because we've maybe done this before or we've had success. So that success gives us a boost, and success leaves clues, as they say. So that means that like you start to build confidence, self confidence in your agency and your ability to navigate the world. And then self worth is much deeper. And that's why I say it's like the roots of your tree, because you could have all the self confidence in the world externally. You could be, the most attractive, the most, whatever beauty standard, you're trying, your gender and your demographic fit into, right? You could try, strive, be all of those things. You could be financially successful, all of that. But as anybody who this will sound familiar to a lot of you, certainly for me, I can very strongly relate. Like, you have been striving for your whole life maybe, and you still feel like there's a huge piece missing even though you've hit all these benchmarks. That's self-confidence with low self-worth. If you have low self-confidence, you may not even feel the drive or motivation or initiative to go and try anything. So that's obviously a problem. But if you have low self-confidence and low self-worth, then you really need to work on both of those. But I think for a lot of artists who are well into their career, and for a lot of creative people and creators, and people who've kind of like, we've proven we can make money, we can proven we can sell things, and that there's an audience for our work. But if we are driving ourselves relentlessly, that's another way that self worth shows up, like self worth issues, because there's a piece of you that may believe I can rest when I achieved X, whatever goal, right? So you're basing your value on an external thing. And it's almost like, where that's good for your self esteem, it's not necessarily good for your self worth to do that, because it's sending yourself a message that says, I'm not worthy of rest until I achieve an external goal.
Right, but it also seems that whatever that external goal is, it seems to be it can constantly be like the carrot in front of you, where it keeps moving. It's like that rainbow, the gold at the end of the rainbow. Good luck finding that. Well, also, I think what's interesting is when you work for yourself, when you're self-employed and you have your own startup, the business is you. If you haven't sorted out your sense of self-worth and self-esteem, like you will burn yourself to the bone, and nobody will be able to tell you other because you can't see outside of that drive that is pushing you so hard.
Exactly. And I think, like, again, this is why projects are so important, because, if you're working on a specific project and you're pushing yourself super hard, and that there's a clear deadline, that kind of, it makes more sense than if you're just like, you won't let yourself be the kind of person who takes a break because you don't feel like you deserve it yet. That's the clue right there, right? It's like, I have a project I'm working on, I have to push for, and there's a logical timeline I'm spreading myself over to achieve that, versus I don't feel like I'm worthy of rest because I haven't achieved X. There's a big difference between the way our internal voice sends those signals to ourselves and what that does to us when we send that signal to ourselves.
Right. So, what would you say is ways of ca- catching it or starting to acknowledge that this is a framework that you're working from? Yeah.
I think first of all, it seems like you need to get really real with yourself, because I think one of the ways that self worth issues manifest is it makes us lie to ourselves a lot. Or, I don't like, lie is kind of a big word, but like, we conceal from ourselves the real reason, or we don't actually analyze the reason why we're doing what we're doing, right? So I think first it is to maybe go, okay, so I am hearing smart people tell me rest is important to actually integrate into my life in a regular cadence, not just like as a reward for like enduring a marathon that I'm constantly running. It's actually something I should be considering as a way of keeping my engine in tune, keeping my equipment up to
Right, like personal health, so to speak, mental health.
like, you need to exercise, you need to sleep, but then there's like that's not rest, right? Rest or play, there's different types of ways that we fuel our soul, and I think it's not a reward. I think it's essential. And so I think that's maybe more, it's just like actually taking a step back from your own routine and looking at like, where am I showing up in a way that I feel like I am doing this because I should versus because this is essential to me. And it gives me like when you do like the term self-care is kind of like gotten blown out into all kinds of definitions, which is fine, whatever works for people. But like, let's say anything we're going to call self-care is something where you're taking some time to do something truly good for you, just you, whether it's like getting a massage or going for a walk or, going in the garden and doing some fun gardening, not like stuff that feels like backbreaking, but like, planting some seedlings and whatever fuels your soul, like that needs to be part of your routine as much as exercise and getting sleep. So I think it's just actually like not making it optional and not, do you know the term self-abandonment?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do this and we don't realize it, but self-abandonment is when you allow things that are priority for you to drop off, either because you feel like it's more important that you do something somebody else needs you to do, or in a case where it's not like, oh, I just like don't literally have time for that, but like where you have this workout routine and you're doing it every day and then you just decide I don't want to do that anymore and you just don't do it, but there's no reason, like
you're aware that it's not a good thing.
Yes.
You're letting yourself down a little.
You're rationally aware, but something inside your body's going like, no. And like,
right.
Those are the moments where you can catch it too, because you can see that you're incongruent, like your body and your mind, or your unconscious and your conscious, they're not in smooth relationship. Yeah, they're not in alignment. That's quite a word. And I mean, I feel like all of this is to say, to be able to be in touch with that creative energy that allows you to explore within the constraints that you're given. I think it helps a lot to have the roots really taken care of, to build practices of self-worth.
And also, I don't know about you, growing up, you were kind of expected to grow out of this thing.
Oh yeah, you mean the art thing?
Yes, the art thing. You're kind of meant to grow out of that at a certain age and like get something serious, something that like, and it's so funny because there's so many stories of the young adult coming to their parents saying, ma, dad, or whatever it would be, I decided to become an artist. And the horror on the face of the parents, like,
Well, I mean, my dad said, I hope you marry a rich lawyer, and he actually specified that it be a Jewish lawyer. I'm not really sure why, but a rich Jewish lawyer was his request for me when I said I'm going to art school.
Right.
Then I ended up working at a law software company later, that was run by a lot of lovely Jewish people. So I don't know if that was like close, but yeah. Still
Well,
want to be an artist.
yeah, I mean, it was like, well, it's funny because although your dad was pretty specific about what he said, because I was saying, mentioning this because sometimes you say something and you say it in a general sense.
Eh,
And in retrospect, you're like, damn, I should have been a bit more specific on that.
I think you have to be very careful what you say to your children or to young people because, when we project our ideas of success onto our kids, it is just perpetuating generational trauma and all of our fears and issues. And it's not letting them have a fair shot. And I do think it's really damaging for self worth too.
Well, also the idea of what success means is completely different to everybody, right?
I think I mean, yes, but there is also like, are you going to be able to survive? You know, I think that's most parents' fear.
Right. I can imagine that and I understand that. But like there are other ways to become successful, not just the way you became successful, you know? And yeah.
Well, I think it's time. So there's a few things here, like as far as like, why is it that there's this idea that to be an artist is so like it's one of the few places where the idea of what it means to be an artist is so narrow in a world where every single other field just about has expanded into so many other verticals and ways of reaching people. But for some reason, the art world remains relatively closed and so therefore small.
But again, like when you say the art world, are you specifically meaning like like visual art, like galleries, museums, and the
Yes.
auction?
The typical art world, like you where the model hasn't really changed all that much in, hundreds of years, arguably. Like, really like you've got galleries, auction houses, museums. You've got the high end collectors, and then I don't know where you stop saying like the art world, but I mean, art is in everything and creativity is in everything. But for some reason, the idea of being an artist still feels pretty relegated to the art world. And I know that artists get a lot of heat if they are like, I'm multidisciplinary. I think most artists nowadays do not care about this, but there is this idea, and this is why parents have that reaction because they think, oh no, you know. But like we need to change that. I think it's time that not be the thing that people think when they think of creative.
Right. And your potential audience is a global. It's not just, the 500 people in your town.
Mm-mm. But you are going to need to look. See, and here's where the piece that I think comes back to again. We're coming back to like the self worth piece, and like artists need to learn business and they need to learn marketing. And Picasso said the most interesting kind of art is the art business. And if you're an artist and you want to be rich, like I am, because he was rich, he was like, listen to me, I'm rich. you know, understand business and but not now more than ever, and understand marketing, learn how to tell a story, because it can only help you and the galleries that represent you.
But like, I need to go to art school. But like, do they teach any of that in art school?
I think some do. And I think it also depends on what discipline you study. Like if you're in more of the commercial arts, like illustration or graphic design, then yes. I think if you're in the fine arts, at least in my experience and from the experience of people I've talked to, you don't get much of that. No, it's really all about getting down to kind of like who you are as an artist. And
It's also almost like the mentality that you just focus on creating art, and you know um, the gallery will take care of the business side for you.
reminds me a lot of the way that like old school OBGYN practices were and still are in some places, but where basically it's like you're pregnant, just this is how much weight you should gain and show up to deliver the baby when I schedule the appointment. Like, and then I had a home birth and it was like, oh, you need to eat this much protein every day. You need to have this much iron. You need to walk these many steps. You need, like, if you want to if you want to take accountability and have full agency, you can, but it's going to look different than you're going to be involved. But like, we gotta, as artists and as people, like we got to stop thinking that there's this contract that we can sign that we're going to hand over all the hard stuff and we get to do all the fun stuff. I think it's actually a way that we disempower ourselves as
You
creators.
like you talk about brand. If you are creating from that place of, let's just call it simply love, which may sound very vague. I get that it might sound too vague for people, but if you are creating from that place, you are also creating something that you feel has a universal value to it that will connect to other people. Because ultimately, as an artist, you really do want to connect to other people. Partially, that's why perhaps you took these things up. You started drawing or painting or whatever it was creative you started doing, because at a human level with words, you found it hard to connect to people. But by drawing something out or making a picture, you felt like you actually could connect to people through that venue or avenue. Um,
And in that connection, what is the connection that you are looking for?
what is the connection that I am looking for?
What level are you hoping to connect on?
One of the paintings that a client bought some months ago, and they bought it, and then they sent an image of it later on. They had hung it in their bedroom, and the lady mentioned that it was the last thing her and her husband saw before they went to sleep at night, and it was the first thing they saw when they woke up in the morning. And she's like that seeing your painting and the structure that you have in that painting just delights us every time we wake up and we see it, and it just uh, puts us in a good frame of mind when we're getting up in our day. And I can't tell you what it is exactly, because sometimes like everyone will experience it a little differently because of depending on where they're coming from. But when it connects, it just seems to leave this kind of almost like any a fingerprint, or like, like right now it's spring in Maine, and like the magnolia tree has just bloomed, kind of at the end of the bloom, and the cherry tree is in full bloom, and it like you look out at that cherry tree and it's like magnificent. It's like showing you something that is vital about the universe right in front of your eyes. But it's doing it in such a beautiful way. And the structure, and you to go down and walk under that tree, and there's so much detail and there's so much fractals going on in there. And it brings you such joy. Carry your mind away to someplace.
It's like definitely a reminder to be in the present and actually observe what's around you.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much beauty around us.
Do you think is that kind of part of your why, like showing that if you just open your eyes, like there's just so much immense just beauty, structure, intricacy.
And you can just get into this really kind of meditative frame of mind being in nature. You're around these things, creatures, when you're in the forest, that quietness, but you feel like there's these sentient beings around you at all times.
I think it's important that we have that attachment to nature because we're losing it. And honestly, the more we lose it, the more it can be lost and like gone forever as far as our human experience goes.
If we ever want to do space travel and get to other places, we have everything around us that can give us the answers and show us the way. But in right now, we're in a process of, whether it's because I feel like internally we are self-destructive in a place where we are self-destructive right now. And it's almost like we're in this weird phase of growth that we feel like we have to break up everything before we are mature enough to see what we have around us. But I think we are getting there. We're getting there. I do firmly believe we are getting there.
Well, it brings to mind 2 points. One, Carl Sagan said we're never going to make contact with extraterrestrial life until we get to the point where we're no longer killing ourselves as a species, because we're basically at a very low light vibrational level when we're still doing that. But I also think that everything inside at the micro level is also happening at the macro level. And if we don't, as a collective humanity, see our own worth, we are self destructive and we're destructive to one another. And each of us individually, if we don't see our own worth, we're self destructive and we're destructive to one another. Like, individually, when we have low self worth, we have horrible habits, or we never can really cultivate the right habits, or we self-sabotage, or but we do the same thing as a people, as a populace. So I do think it's so important that artists have their why really clear. And I think your why of sharing an experience of the sublime connection that is to be in nature is a really, really important one. It might be romantic, but having a why is a romantic thing to begin with. It's having a calling, it's having a purpose, it's having an ideal that you're striving for, that when things get really hard, you can still fall back on because that is bigger than you.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, like, whenever things have been challenging in my life, I feel like art has always been that place I'm able to go back, and it's got such a beautiful, like a universal structure to it that I am never really genuinely scared I'll be able to deal with this.
It's something like between you and your creator.
Yeah, and it's just something that, like, again, it's not something that can be taken away from you or destroyed. Like, it will always be there for you. You know, like, creativity is always there. It's just waiting for you to pick it up.
Well, I think that it is tied up with the self-worth again. When you don't have somebody tell you you're crazy for having that idea, that's as much of a gift as saying go for it. And well, maybe it's so much of it's wrapped up in the fear of like, how will life look in that place where it's unclear, even though like, I think the thing is that we are sold alive in this one because we're told, well, like, yeah, don't be an artist. That's not a guarantee for anything. I mean, how, and also the corporate contract we know is not a guarantee for anything. So basically, the lesson here is there is no guarantee for anything. So it's time to stop worrying that if you take this path or that path, one's going to be right, one's going to be the. I say get really freaking clear on why you're doing what you're doing, and it will take time, especially if you're not used to listening to this voice. Take time to yourself. Take time to analyze your own routines. Look at things of you that you're doing that feel incongruent with the vision you have of yourself. If you don't have these things, start to cultivate a vision for yourself. Also be really mindful of, you say it to me when I'm doing negative self-talk, like sometimes I'll slip into that and you're like, whoa, don't talk to yourself that way. Like be careful of the words you choose to use about yourself, of course about others, but really if you have self-worth issues, listen to how you talk and think about yourself.
And also, I would one last thing, son. I would say, don't do this on your own. Like, have good people around you. You will need them. There will be days where you're not able to hear yourself, your better self, and you'll need people around you who, will, to different degrees, understand what you're doing and support you. And they are just what you need. They're just that push you need. They're just that hug, that conversation that gives you the energy back again to keep going.
That's true. And if you're hearing this and you're like, nobody in my family would understand this, it's okay. They might not be in your immediate circle. They might be, your tribe might be yet to be discovered.
It goes back to the first step. Like, like a 10-mile walk still requires one step at a time.
Put your coat on, put your hat on, put your boots on, even if it's raining.
Yeah, even if it's raining, especially if it's raining.
Just bring some joy into your life. It could be the silliest thing that you haven't done in the longest of times. Don't judge yourself for it. If it brings you happiness, let it in. If it's healthy for you, let it in. I think we don't need so many rules on ourselves about what these expectations are, that normal is. Like, we are not in grade school anymore. We're not in school anymore. When we are, like, that wasn't working and it isn't working. So new age, AI is going to break everything. And I think the best thing we can do is be prepared for it by being really grounded in ourselves and having a strong sense of our why.
Yes, and I think with the arrival of AI, as you constantly remind me too, it's like what will become more and more important is the question you ask.
Right. And then what do you do with that? Like the creative engine has just expanded. We just took an exponential leap. Don't be afraid of AI. If you are, please go play with some AI, get familiar with some tools. The TechMargin is exploring a lot of AI tools, and we are working on content right now for how you can get started with AI. This is more of a business focus, like traditional business service related. But if you are interested in content about AI for artists, drop a comment in this podcast, or if you're on YouTube, below the video. And because this is what we're looking at right now, we're really exploring these edges of what creative tech looks like, and I want to make content that's useful for y'all.
On that note, but that was fun though.
Yeah, it was.